Welcome, weary travelers, to the Crypt of the Unknown. I am the Critical Android. And joining me for this episode, it's a speedrunner hailing from Germany. She's running a lot of games, and we'll go through a bunch of them here, but I'd like to introduce everybody to Tinn.
Hi, everybody. I have my second coffee for today, and I have a cat on my leg, so it's pretty good.
And a baby in the background.
Yeah, you might hear her a bit throughout the whole thing. Let's see.
Well, we heard Laxus's cat during his interviews, so we're used to guests popping up like that. But Tinn, let's see, I discovered your speedrunning. This had to be about almost 2 years ago now, I think, when you did the Femme Fatales run for the Games Done Quick online event.
Oh yeah, that's a while ago already. Time flies.
It really does. And at the time, you were running both Aladdin and Super Castlevania IV. And for me, I was trying to go through a lot of the Castlevania games at that time because I'd realized I played through a lot of them, like an awful lot, but not all of them. And I was looking up different speedruns, found yours, and it's still, sadly, I think, it's a rarity. It's getting better, but it's still more the minority to see women in speedrunning. And here's this Femme Fatales event that's highlighting women in speedrunning. Then I hear like the voice come up. It's like, I think she's German. And sure enough, I was right. You are German.
Yeah, the German accent is a bit weird.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into speedrunning, your history with video games, anything that you feel interesting like that.
Video games I've been playing since forever. I'm not sure if it was when I was 5 or 6, but my dad's been playing forever. First console we had at home was an Atari, so that's what I started with. So video games been around in my life forever. Speedrunning though, it's not as much. I think like I started for something 4 years ago maybe. How that all started is I used to just have Twitch on when I got ready in the bathroom, then when I made my coffee before I started work, and then I just I'm one of these persons, I need something in the background because I really hate silence. So one morning I just decided to turn Twitch on, and for some reason I didn't know for a long time that you can just click through the categories and have different games. So I don't know, I just found that randomly the one morning, and then I feel like, wow, people are streaming Zelda: A Link to the Past. People are streaming, there's Super Castlevania IV. What the heck? Somebody is streaming that. And then I just turned in while I had my first coffee of the day. And I found Furious Paul. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He was a world record holder for Castlevania IV. And then I tuned in, and I didn't know about speedrunning at all. And he was doing a section of stage 3. Over and over again. I was like, wait, what? Why is this guy streaming this game, but he's repeating 3 jumps the whole time? What is he doing? And that's when I realized, he's practicing the game. And then, there's a timer. Wait, this guy's trying to beat this game fast? Well, what is this? And that's how I found out about the whole speedrunning thing. It's amazing.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm very similar. I also cannot have silence in the background because I have terrible ringing in my ears almost like for the last, I'd say, it's 5 years now. So silence is really like anxiety inducing. And I found one of the things that helped was, having things in the background like a fan. But even then, like sometimes just the frequency of the ringing just cuts through stuff. But if there's a voice in the background, it also makes me feel like I'm not as alone. And it's nice to have that comfort of that. Yeah. And even better when you're watching like speedruns, because a lot of them that I watched were from the Games Done Quick events, and you find out that a lot of people in speedrunning are these really just considerate, wonderful, time-giving people who care about others, care about the community, and they put themselves out there for the betterment of others. So it gives you this kind of like wholesome feeling too, along with that kind of extra voice around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you always have like 2 sides. I heard about toxic communities, then there's a lot of speedrun drama here and there, but I really have to say I got super lucky with the communities I've met so far. Like there's almost no, rivalry going on, drama, toxic people who wants to, pull you down and all that. So I really, really had a good start into speedrunning, because I feel like if you haven't speedrun before and you get into a community, it's super important to have people who are, give you a warm welcome, especially if you haven't speedrun any game before, get you to get started with the whole, I need splits, how do I learn a game and all that, instead of, having people who are like, only top runners deserve to speedrun or whatever, people say in a toxic
When it comes
community.
to gaming in general, you and I are around the same age, and when I got into gaming, it was probably like 5 or 6. It was the very early 90s. And at the time, there was this perception in the United States that video games were mostly for boys. And if girls were going to play games, they had to be things that were more, I guess, girl-oriented, like any of like the Barbie games or the Little Mermaid or something that was seemingly stereotypical female. Did you have that experience growing up where games seemed to be like they were supposed to be for boys? Was it any different in Germany?
I feel pretty weird because I think I got really lucky. I don't know why. Maybe it's I can't say it's for all Germany because I know a lot of people who had that too. But in my case, maybe it's just the people I've been around with, like the bubble I've been in when I was younger. I had a lot of people a lot of friends who've been gaming, and I just joined them, and I never really had a feeling it's different because I'm female. So I think I got really lucky. Now that you said the Barbie game, I'm pretty sure you know that one too. There is I'm not sure how it's called, a Princess Peach game.
There is a Princess Peach game for the DS.
Yeah, and I remember when that came out, I saw an interview or something about the game where they said, we wanted to try to make video games that are more appealing to women. And that's why we did this Princess Peach game. And then I looked a bit at the game like, okay, her special power is to cry, and that makes damage to her enemies. Like, what were you thinking, making that as a, appealing game for girls? What the heck? Why can it not be like, you have a real superhero and then, I don't know. I don't feel like that's a good way to get girls into gaming when you have a game like that and it's very stereotype, and you even have like crying as an attack for the hero of your game. Like, I'm not sure if that's
I don't think
thing.
it is either. But what I find is kind of funny is that if you look at two fandoms in particular, I find for hardcore fans of Zelda and Fire Emblem in particular, I think I know more women who are hardcore fans of those games than men. It seems like something about them has drawn a large female audience, and I'm grateful for it because number one, they're fantastic games, but they're also games that are, they're for hardcore gamers. They're not like casual games, these ones. They can be enjoyed casually, but they also have a very hardcore audience, and it seems like a lot of female fans are drawn to them, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
That definitely. Being said, Castlevania, which is one of your favorites, I do not see as much of a female fandom for. They do have some female protagonists as we go through the series, but what got you into Castlevania?
For that one, I really have to blame my dad. I don't know. I'm always happy when I look back at these early childhood memories. It's always been like, the time after we had dinner, he had this like old chair he sat down and right in front of the TV, and he just used to play until bedtime. And I know I was always like super sad when my mom said, okay, now it's enough. It's bedtime for you. Because I really wanted to watch my dad play for hours and hours. And Super Castlevania IV, along with A Link to the Past, Super Mario Kart, been one of the games he played the most. And that really got me into the series.
So when you finally got the chance to move from watching him play to actually playing games yourself, what were some of your favorite titles growing up?
Let me check. Definitely Super Castlevania IV, then A Link to the Past too. But I never got around to beat that as a kid. I always, got frustrated at some point and gave up. Then Yoshi's Island. A lot of, mainly SNES games, to be honest. Star Fox is one I played, but never finished as a kid because same problem. I think I got frustrated pretty quickly as a kid, but I still enjoy the games a lot.
I know Terranigma was one that you've brought up as one that you like to go back to every year around Christmas.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, those games came around a bit later. Terranigma was actually the second game I bought from my own money. The first one was Secret of Mana, only because I saw a friend play that back then. So I knew what I get when I bought it. And, you don't really have a lot of money as a kid. So I was like, okay, that's a safe call to buy that one. And then I got Terranigma as the second game. And I'm not I think we talked about that one once before, but I can't remember. We got these, in Europe, you had PAL, and we got these big boxes of games, like this big, decorative box. You have a huge handbook with it, and we got that for Terranigma and Secret of Mana, Illusion of Gaia, I think, Secret of Evermore, and Super Metroid 2.
For us in the States, we didn't get Terranigma, sadly. But in exchange, there were a lot of games that Europe didn't get that is surprising. And when I was talking to Laxus about that, he mentioned that, at the time, with the lack of internet, you really didn't know what you were missing. But in hindsight, looking back on things, are there games that you've discovered recently that you wish that you could have received as a kid that didn't get released in Germany?
Oh, that's tough, because I gotta think about some. Don't think we got Valus, Super Valus 4. I don't know if there's a PAL version for that. But other than that, it's just on my end, I was missing on a lot of games, especially from the NES era, because we switched from Atari straight to SNES. So I missed on the whole NES awesomeness of games. My end, it's not just games that we didn't get in Europe. It's just a lot of games that I never got around to play. I'm really happy I can finally play a few more.
Well, ones that I've seen you play on stream, starting with the Super Nintendo. I've watched you play through parts of Mega Man X, Terranigma, Super Valus 4, Super Castlevania 4, Aladdin. You've played Pokemon on the Game Boy. You've played Karnov for the NES. And yeah, there was that game too. Castlevania II Belmont's Revenge for the Game Boy. Obviously, there's a core kind of a theme running there of some classically kind of difficult games that are fair but rewarding. Is that the kind of game, that genre that you're normally drawn to, or just good for streaming? Do you play things outside of that when you're not streaming?
I don't really have a preference, I would say. I mean, I really, really like jump and runs. I think that's really a thing I enjoy a lot. But other than that, it comes down to a lot of factors. Like if a game has a really good soundtrack, that makes a huge part for me. Power Blade, for example, has that. I think what drove me to Power Blade is mainly the music. So if it really is, I don't know. If a game has something that catches me, I'm not really. It doesn't have to be around my alley in the first place, or doesn't have to be, let's say, a jump and run or a Castlevania-like game. As long as there is something where I'm like, okay, that's I want to play this game. Then it could be a very different type of game.
Speaking of soundtracks, then, I guess one of the big ones that gets talked about nowadays because it was overlooked for years, and now whenever people talk about overlooked soundtracks, one of the big ones that comes up is Journey to Silius. Have you played that one?
I tried to play it, but it's a damn hard game. It's definitely on my list of games I want to try and beat this year. That's one, speaking about missing all the NES games, that's one of the games I actually missed until 2 years ago or so, when a friend of mine started speedrunning that. And I was watching his attempts, and the more I watched, the more I got kind of catched by the game, mainly because soundtrack is just godlike. And it's probably one of the best NES soundtracks
I made this
ever.
mistake with Laxus, and I'm going to correct that right now because I'm going to look up the name of the composer for the game. Naoki Kodaka, and I'm probably butchering that name as I do most things, but their compositions for Sunsoft are probably one of the more memorable ones in my mind, in the sense that when you hear just a snippet of a Sunsoft soundtrack from that era, you can pretty much instantly tell it's from Sunsoft and not Konami or Capcom or anybody else, because of that very distinct sound that's just so memorable, whether it's Silius or Gremlins 2 or Batman, just amazing music.
Batman is another example of really, really good soundtrack. That's a game I've never really played. A friend of mine, Junkyard Dave, is speedrunning that game with a passion. That's kind of like his Super Castlevania 4. That's his forever game. And every time I watch it, the music is so damn good. And it plays such a huge role whether you are willing to play a game for hours and hours and hours.
Well, before we get into speedrunning more about Castlevania, asking questions about that, since we're on the subject of soundtracks, if you could name 5 games with amazing soundtracks that you feel people, if they had to go listen to something right after they're done listening to this podcast, you had to pick 5 soundtracks they should listen to parts of. What 5 games would you pick?
Oh, that's mainly SNES games again on my end, but I would definitely say Castlevania IV. That's one of my favorite soundtracks. Mega Man X is amazing too. I know a lot of people who put X2 soundtrack over X1, but I really have to say I prefer X1 over X2 in terms of music. Then, yeah, definitely Terranigma. Terranigma has really amazing music. I like how every time I listen to a Terranigma soundtrack, if you play the game, you close your eyes and you just have all the scenes of the game in front of your head. That's really something not a lot of soundtracks can do, in my opinion. So those 3, I also would say Ori in the Blind Forest. Amazing music. Really love that one.
If you toss out one more.
That's so tough between Journey to Silius and
We'll put them both on there.
Both. All right. Let's make it 5.5.
To transition back into Castlevania before we talk about speedrunning, obviously Castlevania has a huge history of amazing music. Even some of its lesser titles, it still has great music in there. What are 5 of your favorite Castlevania songs?
Ooh, I think I'm a bit weird on that one because a lot of people, if you say Castlevania, their first song is "Oh Bloody Tears." No matter if it's CV2 like the original Bloody Tears one, or if it's the CV4 Bloody Tears one, everybody's like, "Oh, Bloody Tears is my favorite Castlevania." I'm not really like that. It's a great song, but for me, I really love Stage 9's music of Castlevania 4. I like Aquarius from CV3. That's another great one. Probably Lost Painting from Symphony of the Night. That's a good one too. Although it plays in the different sections of a game. Usually if that happens and you have a song for various sections, I tend to not like it as much because you have this song, it's just repeated in a lot of areas, which makes you a bit tired of it at some point. I'm having a little cat fight over here. Whoopsie.
You're fine.
I'm sorry. Yeah. If you have one box but 2 cats, that you can tell how that's gonna end. And then probably the rest is Castlevania 4 music again. Yeah, probably Stage 7. The library is a really, really nice song.
I'm surprised you didn't, because this is one of my favorites. I love the violin intro to Castlevania 64, the reworking of Bloodlines.
Okay, that's a good one too. Yeah, that's definitely
a good one. For those who don't know,
too.
It's derivative of the Stage 1 music for Rondo of Blood and also Dracula X, which has this kind of like really funky guitar and great bass line. They just strip it down to a violin intro for Castlevania 64, and as much as the hate that game gets, it has one of the best opening screens in of all Castlevania games. It's amazing.
It's really atmospheric. Yeah, I love it. Also in CV64 you have another track from Bloodlines. I think in CV64 it's called Tower of Arts, where you have this nice song from, I can't recall, is it Stage 3 of Bloodlines, where you have this water rising? I think that's
Stage 2 in Bloodlines, I think.
I haven't really touched
Stage 1 is the castle. Stage 2, the rising water. Stage 3, I think, is Greece. Stage 4 is the Commando Factory. Stage 5 is France. And then Stage 6 is the castle, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, then it has to be Stage 2. Yeah, they took this song too and put it into CV64. That's a really great one.
It is, and even the Game Boy Advance one has some great music, or several of the Game Boy Advance ones. But yeah, there's so much great music in Castlevania. But when you're speedrunning this game, it's not an easy game in general. Compared to other Castlevania games, I think one could argue that CV4 is far more forgiving, largely because of an ample health bar. Enemies don't do as much damage as they were doing in CV1, especially on the NES. The whip obviously can go in multi-directions, which is a huge change. And overall, it seems like it gives the player more chances, but because it's a fairly lengthy game, there's a lot of stages in it. There's also some really tricky parts, too, that can really tax the player. When you go into this game, how do you prepare yourself knowing that, okay, I could spend 20 minutes on this, mess up on like the third to last level, I could mess up like either the clock tower or the platforms that are rising up and completely have to start this over. Is that daunting, knowing that you'd have to do that?
Sometimes it's super frustrating. Talking about clock tower failing, I just had that last week where I had like the best pace since I got back like from a 1-year break of the game. I was like 15 seconds ahead in clock tower, and then that's a super funny one too, because you know how it is. Sometimes you're like, okay, I'm gonna take this safe. By wanting to take it safe, you mess up even more than you would do if you just would do one more too risky stuff. So yeah, that just happened last week, and it's sometimes it's super frustrating, but then again, I feel like you have that with every game, no matter if it's let's say average 36, 38 Castlevania IV game. You can have that with CB1 too. You can go all the way to the Dracula fight, and then once you reached a time where you really have to nail the drag fight in CB1, gotta have this quick kill set up with the crosses. And imagine you're on super PB pace, and then you mess up the quick kill, and the run's over at the very end, at the very last fight. So that can happen on an 11 minutes game too. Sometimes it's super frustrating, but I think it's part of speedrunning. Even if you kill it at some point, you see all the splits and okay, all these time saves are there because I can do that much better. So it has to happen again at some point.
How much of the game is reliant on RNG? Because from the looks of it, from when I watch, it doesn't seem like there's a huge amount, maybe a couple of boss fights. But is this a game that, compared to others, is less dependent on RNG?
I would say it's pretty execution heavy, yeah. We have one huge RNG factor, which is the mummy fight at the end of the clock tower. So for that one, you can have a one cycle depending on where it spawns. And if it has a really bad spawn, can lose like 7 seconds or even more. So that's for Castlevania IV, that's huge. But then the rest of it pretty much is, small RNG sections just adding up over time.
It also seems like this game, one of the key factors to it is memorization of what candles to hit to drop what things, and also where you can take damage boosts. You mentioned when you come back to a game, people often call it de-rusting. People get rusty getting away from things, so we figuratively call it de-rusting. What is the hardest part of that de-rusting process? Do you get to a point where you've memorized those locations and it just becomes muscle memory? Or is it hard to remember like where you can strike for what candles and item drops and what damage boosts you can take?
For me personally, the candles are not that big of a problem. I don't know why. That's just, once it's in the memory, it's just there. I don't really have to think about it. The hardest part about de-rusting for CB4 for me is small movements. I have a lot of screens that once I consider myself fully de-rusted, I'm fully back at the game. Just a few sections where I just autopilot. I just, my fingers are just doing stuff on the D-pad and I don't really think about it anymore. And if you take a longer break from the game, you're starting to be like, okay, wait, how exactly do I need to do this part to, get perfectly through? And then you start thinking about it and you start messing up. There's a lot of that I just lose if I'm not practicing on a regular basis, the small sections. And then also confidence is a thing too. If I'm off a game for longer, especially CB4, if I'm off the game for longer, you get to certain sections where, small things gonna result in really bad time loss or even you dying. Say, for example, stage 3 has a vertical climb at the very end. And there's a ring glitch. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that. You can skip a little bit of a section by getting off a ring that is supposed to, just to do a horizontal swing at. And that things, if I don't do that for a longer time, I enter the screen, I'm already like, okay, do I really want to go for it? Because my confidence is very, very low. And then I have to do it multiple times and have it happen multiple times in a run too, unless I really feel confident at doing it again.
I heard baby in the background going, baby, which is a very common thing to hear on your streams lately. I joked with Laxus when he was playing Link to the Past recently, when his health was low and it kept making the iconic warning noise, that we should do a ROM hack where the beep, 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 beep is just replaced by Tinn going, baby, baby, baby.
Oh, God. But yeah, if the one in the Link to the Past is super annoying. Yeah, oh god, it's probably one of the
I
worst.
think my ROM hack would make it far better, but but getting back to Castlevania 4, when you mention the ring glitch, I think that's possibly the only real substantial glitch I see performed. Otherwise, it's not a very glitch-intensive game, if at all.
Yeah, when it comes to that kind of stuff, we really just have the ring glitch you can perform in the different spots. But then the one big thing we have is a zip in stage
that's
4.
right. There is that zip.
Yeah, saves between 10 and 11 seconds, which is a lot for this game. But besides those two things, it's really just execution. And that's the thing I really like about the game. Like, don't get me wrong, whenever I see people glitch through a game like crazy, let's say Ocarina of Time, there's a lot of glitches. You know, that needs a lot of practice too. You really need to be super precise with some of that stuff, and that's a lot of respect for that too. But personally, I really like when I have to execute a game in terms of movement, damage boosting, and all that. So I really prefer games that have less glitches.
As an example of that, too, for people who are less familiar with the game, speaking of things being execution heavy, maybe one of the bigger time saves of that could be found when you're in the chandelier section of the opening stages of the castle, where there's a lot of these swinging chandelier platforms that require some pretty intense jumping as they move back and forth. And it is possible to go through them start to finish without really stopping, which we would call a one cycle for those not familiar with the terminology, as opposed to having to wait for things to swing back. That's something that's very much execution heavy. There's no glitches involved in doing it. It's just a matter of having to jump at the right places, making sure that you're not losing any time, otherwise you can miss the cycle of the swings and have to wait.
Yeah, that's probably one of the butt-clenching screens in the whole game. That's also one of the hardest techniques we have in the game. So top players do it. They just pull it off in a tournament race, just like that. And then people like me who are still like kind of decent time at the game, but not that good yet, you look at it, you're like, wow, this is insane movement right there. And also, if you die on that chandelier screen, that's one of the worst deaths you can have in the whole game. That's over a minute time loss, and that's huge.
Castlevania IV, since we covered a lot of it, I mean, most of it, like you said, because it's so execution heavy, there's no extremely crazy glitches that can be put on display for the most part. But you've speedrun other games as well. One of them in the Castlevania series is Castlevania II, Belmont's Revenge for the Game Boy, which is, I think, probably overlooked by a lot of casual players who may have heard of the first Castlevania, the adventure game, and been turned off from the idea of a Game Boy Castlevania. But Belmont's Revenge is a solid, very solid game. What got you into that one?
Mainly friends of mine speedrunning that one. I didn't know about any of the older Game Boy Castlevania games. I heard about Adventure being like super, super difficult before I played it. I don't think it's that difficult now that I've played it. I mean, yeah, obviously you have every hit as a downgrade to your whip thing, which they use to create a huge difficulty. But other than that, it's I mean, I'm sorry to say, but it's a good game. I like it. But then, yeah, friends of mine have been starting speedrunning Belmont's Revenge, and I watched it a bit here and there. And for that one too, a huge part was the music. I got caught by the music, and then I watched it multiple times. And at some point, I was just like, yeah, that might be a good speed game. And then I tried, and I really, I don't know, I just fell in love with the game. I don't have that with all my speed games. Aladdin, for example, it's a fun game to speed run, but I don't really feel like I have to grind it down to the extreme. And Belmont's Revenge, I didn't think of that when I started running it, but over time I got really attached to the game and kept
It
going.
is a really good one. There's no denying that it has surprising amounts of atmosphere, great soundtrack. It has a lot more depth to it than it does the original CV Adventure, and actually has story elements of it too, which is something that stands out in that era of Castlevania in general, not just the Game Boy games. So it does a really strong job at maintaining the elements that are needed to have a successful Castlevania game. Speaking of successful Castlevania games, you are an avid defender, as am I, of Castlevania 64. And I 100% back you about this. I don't think the game is as bad as people say. It's got some clunkiness to it that is indicative of early 3D games. But what is it that you would say, look, this is why it's still good and you should give it a chance?
I used to play that a lot with my younger brother back then. And so there's a lot of nostalgia around it. I might not be super neutral on this, but I still like it. One thing is the music is really good too. It's very different from, let's say, classic Castlevania soundtracks, because you don't have these bangers and such as you have in CV3 or CV2. It's mainly like really atmospheric music. But I still like it a lot, and I still like how, even though they really didn't have a lot of possibilities back then with that early 3D, like you said, but they still somewhat try to create an atmosphere. For those who are familiar with the game, if let's say a stage 3 in CV64, you have this villa in the forest, where you get to, and there is like. Okay, there's one human, there's one other vampire hunter in the villa. There's a lot of monsters around, and you just enter that huge house and all these creatures, and nobody's really there. But the atmosphere is so great. They really did a good job on catching that. And that stuff, I feel like it still comes through, even though you have all these downsides of early 3D, and CV64 has a bunch of things. Even loving the game, I'm like, okay, that's, I get why that's frustrating for people talking, I know, platform grabs, hitboxes, the camera. I still feel like by playing, I get a certain atmosphere, and I really like that, because that's the thing I generally love about Castlevania games.
Now,
Baby
Baby does agree. Obviously, we might not be able to get Baby's thoughts on this one, but I know your thoughts on this game. And it's one that you've taken up more recently, and you actually were speedrunning it not too long ago, before returning back to Castlevania IV. But you were also speedrunning Super Valis 4 for the Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom, actually, because you're playing the Japanese version. How did you get into that game? Was it also watching other streamers?
For this game, yeah, I have to blame a friend of mine, Joe D'Amelio. He used to have the world record for Castlevania 4, and he was also grinding Super Valis for, I believe, 3 years ago. I didn't know the game before, because I really believe we didn't get a PAL version of that in Europe. So I believe there's only the Japanese and US version of Super Valis. So I kind of randomly watched him back then. We didn't know each other that well at that time. And I watched it, and it's the same again. The soundtrack was so good, and then the game general too, and then I watched it and watched it again. At some point I was like, yeah, that's a good game. I really when he was grinding the game back then, I was deciding I gotta pick it up at some point, but in the end it took me like 3 years to finally get to it. But still very awesome.
That seems to be
game.
another one that, aside from like odd damage boosts that you're not supposed to do to get up to like certain areas, like I think it's in the Valhalla level, you have to take a damage boost to get up to one of the like stone walkways where normally you have to successfully jump across them, but you can make it from the ground upwards with damage boost. Are there any other that I'm missing, like glitches in that game, or is that another one that's just straight up execution heavy?
From the stages themselves, it's really execution heavy, but when it comes to the bosses, that's purely RNG. Doesn't have any like real glitches, so to say, except one. There's one glitch we use that is called Headless, where you pretty much you get into crouch animation after beating a boss, and then what the game does, it removes the upper part of your hitbox. Maybe you've seen that in the attempts. If you jump, let's say, under a bridge and your head goes into the ceiling, that's because of the Headless glitch. That's one of the only glitch so far I know of that we are using in the speedrun to kind of like extend the height of our jumps, which helps a lot with some stages. And also if you would jump up and let's say there's a dragon thing throwing a fireball at you, and you jump up and your head is like into the fireball, but it won't register damage because, your hitbox is pretty much not there. And that's the only glitch.
Surprisingly, there is a huge difference between the version you play and the one that North American players might find on their Super Nintendo or made available on the Switch Online. The Japanese version, from what I understand, or I should say the North American release, has the damage you deal and doubles the damage you take.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
it is,
huge.
because I tried just for the sake of it. I was thinking, well, I'm going to see how close I can get to what Tinn does. I'm just going to give it a try and see what happens. And I quickly realized she's killing these bosses a lot faster than I am, and I'm taking way more damage. And then
Mm.
I realized exactly why that is, because they intentionally made the game harder for North American release.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they did that. I mean, you would have been okay probably with dealing half the damage, but then for some reason they decided, yo, what else can we do? Let's also have them take double the amount of damage because that
It's not
sounds
fun at
fun.
all, Tinn. It ain't fun at all.
It's
Not fun at
not.
all. So we covered a lot of the games that you speedrun. So moving past that, just to ask a few more questions before we wrap things up. What games have you not speedrun yet that if you had the time, or if you get bored of CV4 for some reason, what other games have you seen that you wish you could dive into speedrunning on and hope to learn?
There's a huge list, and I really hate how this naturally goes because when I started out, I only had 2 games in my mind. I wanted to do CV4 because that's my favorite game of all time. And then after a while, I said, okay, one other game I used to play a hell lot when I was younger, I really love is Mega Man X. So I put that on my list. And then for some reason, I know how it happens. You watch other people. I partly blame Lexus for that. You watch people, and they're like, yeah, that's a dang. That looks like a good speed game too. And then the more you watch, you wanna give that a chance too. So for some reason, the list grows longer and longer, and I really hate that. But yeah, Mega Man X has been on my list, I think, the longest. I'm pretty much 4 years now. So Mega Man X won any percent, something I want to do at some point. But that's, yeah, like as you know, it's a pretty technical game. And for games I really love, I just don't put a run up there. I really want to have a good time. And for Mega Man X, I get the feeling that if I commit to the game at some point, it's a huge commitment. I got to be at the game for, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 years. So that's why I don't want to
Right.
commit right now because I don't feel like, yeah, that's a good time with everything that's going on in real life. And then also be stuck at the game for 2 or 3 years. You really need to have the right mindset because otherwise you're just gonna either get bored, get too frustrated, not being able to switch between a lot of games. CV64 is one I want to do at some point. Castlevania 3 is a nice speedrun too. There's a bunch of other games, Power Blade, Journey to Silius maybe, but those 3 games, that would be fun to get
When you're talking about all
started.
these different Castlevania games that rank in there, so where does Castlevania Judgment, which is objectively the best Castlevania game they've ever made, where does that fall into place in terms of where you'd want to play that one?
Maybe that's gonna be my retirement speedrun. So like the last game I'm gonna speedrun, and then I'm gonna speedrun that as the only game until the day I die. It sounds like
That
a
makes
good
sense. So
plan.
when baby's all grown up, she's has her own kids of her own. Grandma Tinn's going to be playing Castlevania Judgment just for the exercise and moving the
Oh my god.
Wiimote and be like, get away from me, kids! I'm playing Judgment.
Oh god. I just I have that picture in front of me. It's like, oh god. Oh yeah, but best game by far. Really, really best game that
Well, here's
exists
a
out
fun
there.
question. I know from references in stream and also from different posts that you've made, you're an anime fan. Are there any particular games based off of an anime that you really enjoy, or have there been ones that you were looking forward to and was like, wow, that turned out really bad?
Honestly, I haven't really played any games based on an anime so far. I know there's a Berserk game that came out a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago, and I watched somebody stream through that. It looked pretty good, but I don't know. Maybe I'm super picky when it comes to having games based off animes or movies. Also the other way around. If there's been a bunch of movies based on games, and if I think about it, just trying to name one spontaneously, I can't think of any good movie based on a video
See, this
game
is the
right
funny
now.
part about living in America and speaking to people from other countries is that a lot of the time America puts culture in the sense of like movies, music, games, all this stuff, television shows. We push a lot of that out to other countries, but we don't tend to take a lot in from other countries. Like, if I had to think of things from Germany that were popular in the States, I mean, Rammstein was popular for a couple years, and that was maybe about it. I mean, there's just not a lot that translates over.
Hey, whoa. Some people put sauerkraut in their hot dogs.
Okay, well that's true. We do have some German dishes like that, and some what we call loan words, like the word kindergarten, which is what we use for kids who go into school before, first grade, second grade. They start off in kindergarten. That's originally a German word. And then there's Schadenfreude, which is a German word. And then I think that's about it. Unless we count the amazing song Der Kommissar from Falco, but he was Austrian, not German, so he doesn't count either.
Yeah.
Alles klar, Herr Kommissar?
The only thing I can think of, she liked that one a lot, I guess.
Just come to the little baby cradler in my arms. Oh, alles klar, Herr Kommissar? Oh.
Oh God, she doesn't stop. This is wonderful. Wow, maybe I just I gotta book you for a day or two, Android, to make it.
Just sing Falco lyrics to her, and sing all of Rock Me Amadeus.
Yeah. Yeah, please. Now, the only thing I can think of is I heard German cars. A lot of my US friends got a German
Volkswagen.
car.
That's probably the other big thing. But like, for example, the movie Mortal Kombat, the film version of it was, in the States at least, one of the better versions of a video game turned into a film. I mean, was that popular in Germany?
Yes, it was. I actually forgot about that one, but I was talking about Mortal Kombat movies just a week ago with some people on Twitter, and I'd say we mostly agreed on the first one being really, really good. And then I know that there was a second one. I'm not sure if there was a third one, but I watched at least one more I didn't like at all. But the first one, maybe that's nostalgia reasons too, but I loved the first one.
It actually holds up. It holds up pretty well, honestly. I forgot of all the German imports. I mean, we had Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I mean,
yeah.
So I mean, we got that, but no, it really is funny how the perception of Germans in America is still so very stereotypical. Like, we think of Germans as angry, efficient workers, just with a very angry sounding language. And clearly that's not the case, but it's just one of those things that sticks in the mind. But then again, obviously there's perceptions of Americans in other countries too that differ based off of what we see in TV and media versus real life.
Yeah,
but that's one of I think the fun things about learning about other cultures is if you go in without a preconceived mindset and all these ideas built up in your head, you find out just how much common ground we have, and a lot of the shared experiences across things just the little things that we enjoy, like music and film and things like that. But how can I forget? There's the German experimental electronic band Kraftwerk, which I absolutely love.
Oh, I don't know them. I'm sorry.
You have to listen to Kraftwerk. I mean, their first album, I think they have a song called Rucksack, which is very good. They were popular for their CD Autobahn, which had the title track. It's probably not your style of music because it's really like 80s, late 70s, early 80s electronic. But I'll send you a couple tracks, see if you enjoy it.
Yeah, sure. So Gab, I need to close.
Like I said, there's not a lot that came over from America from Germany, but as we start to wrap things up, what are some of because we talked about speedrunning games, but what are some of your favorite games in general? Maybe you don't get around to speedrunning them, but ones that really have a place in your heart. I know you mentioned Terranigma was the second game you ever purchased, and Secret of Mana was up there too, Castlevania IV, but anything else we haven't talked about that really sticks with you?
Yeah, one game I mentioned a lot, and people might not guess that I like it as much, is from the Deus Ex series, is Deus Ex Human Revolution. Mainly because that's the first one of the series I started with. just because of the theme of the game, I really like this whole, what makes us human. Then you go to all this bionic eyes and stuff. If you think about it a bit more, it's a really interesting topic about, okay, if we start doing that a bit more, the better the technique gets. And if we get certain parts replaced of the body, for how long can we still call ourselves human and all that? And what might be the negative side effects of that once we that starts to be a thing a bit more. Also talking dividing society and all that. So imagine that really becomes a big thing. What does that do to society too? Like, you have some people who could afford to get bionic eyes and hands and all that, and also work a bit more efficient by having those. And then you have people who can't afford it. What, all the consequences and all that. I really like to think about that a lot. I like that cyberpunkish aspect of the game. Because if you think about it, let's put 50 years on, then we might actually have that. And it's kind of scary, but also really interesting to think about.
One of the things that I'm not sure if this is a crossover, it seems to be, but I know a lot of people who enjoy the Castlevania series who also enjoy horror in terms of film, books, television series. Are you a fan of horror films in general, or?
Yeah, I haven't watched any in the past few years. Generally, I like more the psycho kind of horror movies where, it messes with the minds of the protagonists and all that. You build up atmosphere by, if you say Coppola, maybe the music plays a huge role too, right? You have all this music in the 80s movies. You have that a lot, where you build up tension and atmosphere through music, and you get scared just by you have certain music playing, and you're like, oh god, very iconic music in some movies, and that shit's gonna go crazy soon. And then you have a lot of modern movies, and maybe that's a reason why I haven't watched a lot of horror movies in the past few years. It became more of a jump scare kind of thing, and I'm not really scared by that. The same for video games, where you have these games where just enemies jump out of the dark at you, and especially if that happens a lot, first of all, it gets kind of repetitive, and you kind of get tired of it. It's just, okay, just another one jumping in my face. All right. And I don't know. It's not. So
we won't be seeing a speedrun of Five Nights at Freddy's anytime soon from you?
Nah, not really. I mean, I watched a friend doing that as a special on his stream, doing the game VR. So it looked kind of fun, but I really like it when, especially for horror movies, if you have this psychology aspect, if that's what creates the being scared, that's more of my thing.
If you had to pick a game that you would say does not get enough attention, a game that you really enjoy, but not enough people either give it credit or it was just overlooked, what's one game you would recommend to people that they should go back and take a look at that just didn't get the attention it deserves?
Okay, this is...
Davey wants to hear this answer tremendously.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not really a game that really stands out, I would say. But there's a bunch of games I used to play, but nobody really else did. One of them is Pushover.
Okay. Yep, the domino game.
You're familiar with that one? Yeah. I think we were talking about it on stream at some point, and somebody said it was published on US site.
It was. I remember distinctly it being in our Nintendo Power magazine growing up, and it giving a description of what all the dominoes did. And it kind of reminded me at the time of like a unique version of Lemmings in that sense.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's why I like it, because Lemmings was a game my dad played a lot too. I didn't really understand it as a kid back then. I tried to play it, but I always messed up and had all of them dying. So, but yeah, Pushover is a really nice game. Has some really chill music. I haven't played as many puzzle games in the last few years, but it's definitely fun. It's a nice difficulty. It's rising over the levels. It starts off pretty nice and then gets it gets a bit harder. But yeah,
I forgot
really
to
nice
ask Laxus this, and I wanted to ask somebody. You speak English incredibly well. How common is the English language used in Germany, and how did you learn it so efficiently?
I mean, it got a lot better for me over the past few years, mainly because streaming a lot, talking a lot to US people or people all over the world. You meet through speedrunning. That's a good aspect of it. I remember when I was streaming for the very first few times, I was barely talking on stream because my English was still so bad. And that's with me having talked English for years, because you're in Germany, you landed as the first language after elementary school already. So that's many years of learning English. But if you don't really speak it a lot, on a regular basis, I feel like that's what helped me a lot, improving on that. I feel like I'm still missing a lot of words when I want to describe stuff, or the pronunciation is pretty off sometimes. But it's gotten a lot better, and the most of that is because just speaking to people or hear people speak English a lot, and then remember some of the stuff.
So if people want to hear you speaking English about video games, they can tune into your Twitch live streams, which generally tend to be pretty early in the morning American time on generally Saturday mornings around like 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the morning, 3 to 4 sometimes, and I think that's around like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning Germany. So they can tune in there. I'll include a link below. You also have a YouTube channel where you upload clips of other games, though I believe you provide just in German for the most part for those, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I started a Let's Play channel before I went on Twitch, and it's mainly German, playing through games and commentating.
So if people want to check out your streams, I mean, I highly recommend it. I've been subscribed for, God, was it just a 16-month or 18-month like subscription?
God, yeah, so long already.
It seems like it was just yesterday sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I still can't get over why people even subscribe, because I always feel like, you have so many people on Twitch, can't really say, okay, I'm one person that puts a lot of heart into the thing, because a lot of people do that. I got to meet a lot of awesome people who really work hard on their streams. I mean, you do that too with your podcast also, when you get to play casual stuff on your YouTube. That's a lot of people who you have really fun playing your games, and people feel that. There's so many of those people, and it's so hard to for the smaller ones to really find them, just because there's so many.
There's a lot of wonderful people out there, and you're trying to find exposure is so difficult because it feels like it's just sometimes a drop in an ocean. There's still a lot of fun to be had in terms of joining that community. You have some great people who frequent your streams, whether it be Laxus or Grom, Spriven. There's so many other people who I can't even Lucha. They just all come to mind, but there's just so many there that help make it a fun community. And it's a place where I try to spend some time when I can to just, feel that sense of just fun and community. And it makes the week a little bit brighter. I can put it that way. And I think if people tune in who haven't already, they'll feel that way too. And they can catch the archive streams if they miss the live ones. So there's plenty of content to go through, and more games to come. So, Tinn, I want to thank you so much for finding the time. I know you're busy, not just with streaming, but with your growing family and your beautiful baby in the background, who seems to really enjoy me saying one German phrase over and over.
Oh, yes, yeah. No, but I really had fun doing this with you. I know you've been asking a long while ago, and that's mostly due to me being a bit of an introvert. Like, there's stuff I really have a lot of trouble with. Let's say phone calls. I hate doing phone calls, even if it's with my family. So I really needed some time to, get a bit confident with doing interviews and such. But I'm really happy we finally got together to do this.
I'm glad too, because I've always said for a while, when it comes to people streaming, most of the time people tune in more for the personality than for the games. And when it comes to finding those people who just promote a good, happy, healthy environment, I think now more than ever, since we're trying to break through this COVID pandemic, you need to find those good times and good people and cherish them for what they are. Because if you don't have that in life, then life is just too short to go without good things like that. For a lot of people, maybe they overlook this, but you start to realize that as much as we think of life in big moments, whether it be, getting married, having a kid, buying a house, starting school, graduating from college, those big moments, but in between the big moments are just like little things you can enjoy, whether it be a new song you haven't heard before, reading a good book. And those little moments help unite us and also push us through some of the harder times. And when you have somebody who's putting on good content with an inclusive community that's really warm and sweet, you've got to take those joys and just kind of help spread that love. So thank you for doing what you do, for putting that community together, and for helping to nurture it, and for taking the time out to talk about it with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for the interview. I really
For those
had a lot of
listening, if you
fun.
want to, as mentioned, I've put Tinn streams, a link to that Twitch channel in the comment section, as well as the YouTube channel. If you speak German, you'll understand a lot more than I do, because I can't understand a goddamn thing.
I mean, I can teach you.
Based off my knowledge of Falco lyrics, I mean, clearly I'm a step above other people, right? Or I'll just talk about Mozart music and Eine kleine Nachtmusik, right? Yeah, there we go. That's all I do. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Check out more content here, whether it be on the Crypt of the Unknown channel, where we did a podcast with Laxus, another speedrunner, and more to come, by the way. And then there's also the Critical Android channel. Post my own video game playthroughs, as well as podcasts and more discussions. So plenty of content all around to check out. From myself and Tinn, we wish you all a good day. And for now, the Crypt is closed.